Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Jonathon Aslay. He is a prominent dating coach, self love advocate, author, speaker, and blogger. Welcome to the show, Jonathon.
Well, thank you so much, AJ, for having me. I'm excited.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll be talking about self love, how it's a dating's missing piece that we need to understand about. But before we come to this part, Jonathon, let's understand a bit about your journey, your background, so that people know who they are listening to and can understand your sayings better with your background.
Sure. I'll try to give this short and brief. So after turning 40 and going through a divorce almost 2 decades ago, I found myself out in the dating marketplace. And, online dating was just in its infancy 20 years ago. And I found myself dating, putting myself online, and I'd go and meet someone and I'd have a good date and, nice person, but something wasn't right. Go on another date, nice person, something wasn't right. Another date and another date. And in 1 year, I had over 100 first dates. And I realized that the something right wasn't me. And this is when I began my journey of personal development, self-help, and spiritual work to truly understand what was going on inside of me. But what was interesting, AJ, is that I was communicating with all these women, and oftentimes it wasn't even going on dates. I just speak to women, talking to them about their divorce, predominantly divorces, because most of the people I was speaking to were divorced, and having them share their experiences. Pretty soon, some of these women would reach out to me and say, "Hey, Jonathon, do you mind looking at my dating profile and helping me make it better?" And then I started to give them advice on their dating profile and improve it. And then pretty soon, a few weeks later, they'd call me up and say, "Hey, Jonathon, I'm talking to this guy. Will you look at his profile and tell me what you think of him?" And all of a sudden, I realized I had a knack for helping people improve their dating profiles. But more importantly, I had a knack for helping women understand men. And a few years later, I put together a website, as a dating and relationship coach. This was all by accident. And since then, I've amassed over 20,000 hours of coaching in the last 15 years. I've also personally done over 3,000 hours of personal development workshops, trainings, videos, and such to really understand human pair bonding, but more importantly, how we can connect at a more compassionate way. And then by the time I got to writing my book, which is called What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway, since this is what we're talking about, 6 years ago, I lost my son to an accident. And in my grief, I began doing a deeper dive into who am I? Why am I here? What's this all for? And it was actually the precursor to writing this book. And what I've recognized in the dating process, dating triggers, for most people, dating and relationships triggers our number one emotional health wound is I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not likable. And so in many cases, people haven't done the inner work to really navigate the dating and relationship process. So I'm a big, gigantic advocate for that. I'm not here to teach you all the little tricks and tips you should do in the dating process. I'm here to encourage individual work, as you're in the process of getting to know another human being.
Absolutely. Jonathon. So before we move forward, with all the knowledge at that point in time, helping your former, dating partners, did all that knowledge help you in your dating scene, or was it the same like before with all that knowledge you got in that process?
This is a great question. And I say this with a little bit of humbleness. So, interesting enough, having ignorance sometimes is bliss. When you know too much, you can actually, I don't want to say dismiss someone pretty quickly, but you might find yourself going, we're not a match sooner rather than later. So there's a benefit to vetting another person for compatibility. I'm a big proponent of vetting each other for compatibility. Okay. With that said, since my divorce, I've had two significant relationships, one that was on and off for 6 years. But to be candid with you, I was I wasn't a total train wreck when I met that woman, but I was still very much healing from some deep wounds that I experienced after my divorce. And also I had a professional collapse. So the ground underneath me wasn't very solid. Okay. And actually, why this is so important for this conversation, because I help women understand men. When a man's life doesn't feel solid, he might look good from, an emotional perspective to a woman. This oftentimes happens because men's life who aren't solid, they oftentimes can be very vulnerable to women. But at the same time, when a man's life isn't solid beneath him, he oftentimes can be more self-centric in the process and more selfish, not intentionally, just a byproduct of where he's at. And so for that relationship, I had a lot of learning to do. And then I entered into a significant relationship where we moved in together some years ago. And I fell deeply in love with this person. I wanted to go the distance. I wanted to get married, but she was in a different place in her life. Her journey had more work to do outside of this relationship, and she ended the relationship. And why this is an important part of answering your question is that I went through the deep pain of losing a treasured relationship, almost a death of sorts. I mean, without the finality of that. And to navigate that experience, I recognize that the universe, God, universe, or spirit, however you look at it, wanted me to really empathize with so many of my clients who have had the exact same experience. A treasured relationship ends. So now as a coach, I can better, help my clientele. So in some ways, I'm not here to advocate getting the guy per se or finding that ultimate relationship. I'm here to advocate to find the most important relationship in your life. And that's the relationship with self through the dating process. And, God willing, God, universe, spirit willing, you find an amazing partner along the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the main reason to ask that question, Jonathan, was to not know about the success rate or the not so success rate. The main reason was to understand about love. What it
Yeah.
truly means to love, because it's all about dating, and some people think it is in the your search for soulmate or finding the true love. And then we are talking also about, amidst all the true love or not so true love and the dating scene, we are talking about self love. So when you get into this dating scene, meeting people, what should you look for? A dating partner, love, and where does self love come in? Does it come before it, or does it come after falling in love?
Oh, I think this is a great question. So, I don't know what it's like in India, but I'll speak here for the United States a little bit. Okay. We over here hyper focus on romance in the early stage of dating. So, what happens is we are driven oftentimes by lust or limerence as the engine to take off this fledgling experience, which starts with dating and possibly can lead into a relationship. Okay. Why do we have so many relationships end or fail? And when I say so many, the average person, at least here in the United States, has dated dozens of people. They've actually had half a dozen relationships, and they still might find themselves single. It's because we kind of do it backwards. I say romance should be reserved for couples in a relationship, not as an entry point into relationship. Now, coming back to your question about self-love. Self-love is, self-love is self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-reliance, self-discipline. That's what self-love encapsulates. But more importantly, it's a process of self-awareness, knowing what your triggers might be, knowing where you might have an attachment wound, knowing the healing from past relationships and not carrying that bitterness, anger, or jaded, or pain into any future relationship. That's what's encompassing within self-love. So AJ, I want to share something with everybody.
Yes, please.
People ask me, when are you ready for a relationship? Well, I always say, when your desire and capacity for a relationship exceeds the pain, fear, pain, and the circumstances of your life. Now, what I mean by circumstances of your life, if you're going through a contentious divorce, that might exceed your desire and capacity to be in a relationship. As an example, if you're going through troubles at work, that might exceed your capacity to be or desire to be in relationship. Because here's the challenge. Now, this is the double-edged sword we're faced with. Most everybody wants some companionship, some connection, some physical intimacy, sex, but they may not be capable or have the capacity for commitment. So this is why we see so many people in casual relationships and situationships with hookups and friends with benefits. And I'm an advocate for life partner based dating. In other words, you date with an intention, a sincere intention to find a life partner that you either live with or you get married, whether it's a spiritual marriage or a legal marriage. Why is this so important? Because when you don't go in with a long-term game plan, what happens is many people have short-lived experiences, and that wears on us emotionally. There is collateral damage to going from one circumstance to another to another. And we see this here in the United States. I can't speak for India, quite frankly, but we see this merry-go-round going on for so many people. And emotionally, we have a population that's starving for connection. And sadly, they've been hurt so much that they can't even get back up. That's how often they've been hurt.
Right. So does that mean that if you are looking for long-term relationship, then you should be very upfront about it from the very beginning, that this is what I am looking for, so that there is no mismatch of expectations? How does that work or does not work? Will it be pushing you out of the dating game altogether and you don't want to risk that?
Well, sadly, people are afraid of being, being more direct. And when I say by direct, being more intentional. So you're right. There's some people say, well, I'm not ready for a serious relationship. Well, guess what? The minute you enter into physical intimacy with someone, you are beginning something serious. So if you don't have an end game in your consciousness now, what happens is one person develops feelings for another person. One person says, well, I'm never going to get married. This is a short-lived experience. But the other person gets attached, and then you're going to have a conflict going into it. So now you just said something that I think it's important to highlight. Many people might say, well, I'm not looking for anything serious, as that is being the indicator for, like if someone says I'm looking for a serious relationship and the other person says I'm looking for, that's not the question. I mean, that's an important question to ask, but we have so many more questions that need to be asked. In my private coaching, my clients have to put together an extensive questionnaire that they have themselves fill out, but more importantly, that the man they fill out before they ever get physically intimate. For example, understanding their past relationships and what happened in their past relationships will give an indication of what will happen in future relationships. Now, in the United States, my methodology is not very attractive because it's not romantic. And some people will say it's too direct, but I'm here to say, if two people have physical attraction, that's all you need, is that I'm attracted to you, you attracted to me. And if you have an inquiry about the other person, then ask all the tough questions early. See if you check those bigger boxes, not the superficial boxes that most people look at. Check those deeper boxes and then build from that, because the more compatible two people are, the greater chance they have for relationship success.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to understand self-love better,
Yeah.
I thought in love, it's all about, there is this, you give yourself away.
Yeah.
And in self love, you are taking more time for yourself. And then there is another word called selfish. How do you then find love amidst all these different terminology? It's quite confusing for a simple person like me. Help me understand this, Jonathan.
So I love this question, and I'm going to use the analogy of when you're traveling on an airplane, okay? And when the flight attendant says to the passengers, in the case of cabin pressure change, oxygen masks will be dropped from the ceiling. And if you're traveling with a small child, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Self-love is that space of giving yourself love, okay? Has nothing to do with another person. So whenever you're triggered, whenever you're sad, whenever you're feeling discouraged, whenever you're afraid, whenever you butt up against an insecurity, self-love is like the parent taking care of the little child within you and saying everything is going to be okay. That's self-love, okay? In relationship love, the way I look at it, when two people say the words, I love you to each other, I think those are very powerful words because it implies something present and future. So to me, I love you means I'm here. You matter. We are important. I've got your back. I'm not going anywhere and I only want you. I'm here means I'm present to this experience with you. I'm not thinking about the past. I'm not thinking about the future. I'm not thinking about the better deal that could be elsewhere. I'm here present. You matter. You matter means I'm going to put your feelings commensurate to my own feelings. Because if my feelings matter, your feelings matter too. We are important. Okay. That means the relationship is a separate entity. There's a you, there's a me, and then there's the Venn diagram where you cross over. The relationship is a separate entity that we should nurture together. Okay. I'm here. You matter. We are important. I've got your back. That means, hey, if you need a ride to the doctor, if you need a ride to the airport, if you need something, I'm going to be there for you. I'm
Right,
here. You
right.
matter. We are important. I've got your back. I'm not going anywhere. It means I'm fully committed to this relationship. I'm fully committed to this relationship. And lastly, I only want you. That means you are my lover. You are my friend. I only want you. Now, how many people say I love you very cavalierly? They say it emotionally, but the meaning behind it, I think, has value. And if we don't identify the value of I love you to another person, then oftentimes it's said very hollow. So coming back to your last part of that question is selfishness. Selfishness, in my mind, is basically have only focused on your own needs without understanding that there might be collateral damage to another person if you're only focused on your own needs. And that's being selfish. It's important to be self-love, give yourself love from that perspective of selfishness. But in my mind, so long as it doesn't harm another human being in any way, it's okay to be selfish, but if there could be a consequence to somebody else.
Right. So when two people are dating each other and one is a bit reserved in the name of self love because of the past relationships and anything, how do you make sure that they are actually practicing self love or are actually using you till they jump ship? How do you
Well,
look into
this
that?
is a tricky question because I'm going to say that the most human beings don't do the personal development, self-help, and spiritual work or therapy to heal from their past. Most everybody has a childhood wound, some more severe than others. And most everybody, by the time they get to working with me, I work with people in midlife, which I say is after baby making years and before retirement. That's my average age demographic. Most likely you've had several relationships. And if you haven't done the proper grieving, which is part of the self-love process, then you're going to take that energy forward into. But it takes a level of self-awareness. You have to be aware. Self-awareness is like, look, I'm getting triggered. Now, most people do this when they get triggered. They point the finger at somebody else, but there's three fingers pointing back at you. Okay. Self-love is the recognition that I am responsible for what's going on. And until two people hit that space from an emotional level, it's going to be challenging if one person does it and the other person doesn't. Now, AJ, there's another huge part of this conversation that gets missed, especially in the dating realm, is that most human beings have weak emotional maturity, but more importantly, have the poor relationship skills, poor skills to verbally articulate A, what they're feeling, and B, articulate what they're feeling in a way that can be seen, heard, and understood. A lot of people just vomit their feelings. They're very confrontational with their feelings. And I've observed this from women. By the way, my audience is women. They all think they're very good communicators. And I can tell you, women are delusional, just like men are equally poor at this. Men and women equally can be very poor at articulating their feelings, but more importantly, their needs in a relationship. Most humans have duct tape over their mouth. They're not properly expressing what they need out of this relationship because we've been indoctrinated with a fantasy, the romantic Cinderella version of relationships, instead of the nitty-gritty aspects of a relationship. And it's no wonder we have a dysfunctional relationship experience here in the United States, given the divorce rate, especially for second and third marriages. So these are just some of my rough thoughts to your question.
Wonderful. Now, I want to understand, when is self-love most important? At what stage in life? Should it be more in terms of when you are, say, 18, 19? Or is it about midlife? Or is it about more self-love is needed when you are, say, 50 plus or beyond that?
This is a great question. So if I think back, and again, when I think of self-love, I think of self-awareness, self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence, all of those things. It's an introspective journey. And the only reason why it's associated with love is that the idea is to recognize that most human beings are going to suffer at some point, and in some cases for a very long time, or even, moments here and there kind of thing. Suffering is part of the journey. I think in India, you guys talk about that a lot, okay? Self-love it's kind of like the vaccination to emotional chaos. So, if you can begin a practice of personal development, self-help, and spiritual work at a very young age, by the time you become a senior citizen like me, you would probably have been able to navigate the ups and downs and roller coasters of life. Okay. My journey didn't begin until after I went through a divorce. I lost my high-end corporate job, and I got wiped out in the market crash of 2008. And AJ, I went to bed wishing I didn't wake up for almost a year. I was in absolute depression. And if it wasn't for, well, I'll be candid with you, my addiction to online dating, which ended up being my savior because now it's become my profession, but also the personal development, self-help, spiritual work, and therapy, I wouldn't be here today. And I'm going through some rough stuff right now in my life. But thankfully, the emotional scaffolding I put around me is helping me navigate some really emotionally dark places I can go to. And that's what self-love is effectively.
You have explained it very well. And let's learn a bit more from your book. What the heck is self-love anyway? Who is this book for, Jonathon?
I'm going to share with everybody. This is a very simplistic book. I mean, it is not like this in-depth kind of book. It is anybody who is on a journey of self-discovery, on a journey of self-awareness, anyone who is on a journey to improve themselves, to grow. It's a very simplistic book. There's it's 30 short chapters, very easy read. It's not meant to be the end all be all. What it is in my mind, just a catalyst to invite every human being to invest in yourself every single day. Even if you can invest 30 minutes. Beyond just meditation or yoga, let me just say this, on true introspection work and recognizing your patterns and actually actively healing it. My invitation for everybody is to love themselves. And in that process, you become magnetic attractor, hopefully for someone else that loves themselves. And you can begin this dance called dating, mating, or relating. And if you're lucky, you find someone you can fall deeply in love with. Both people fall deeply in love with each other. And for lack of a better word, you live happily ever after.
Wonderful, wonderful. These are sweet words, great words, and I'm sure with your advice, a lot of people, will certainly benefit. So, a lot of people who would like to learn more from you, about your book, from your book, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Okay, right here is my name. Right here, my name is listed, Jonathon Aslay. You can Google it. I would go to my YouTube channel. I record over a half a dozen videos a week on my YouTube channel. You can certainly go to my website and download my free gift. One of it's called the Dating Vows, which are essential questions to ask before you're physically intimate with someone. And certainly you can listen to my podcast on Apple and that sort of thing.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.